Hello everyone, it's Sandra here. We are looking in on Anne's bin, which I started with just 125 worms. I'm running this bin by the book for those of you that might be interested in also starting a bin with just a small number of worms. What does it look like? How long will it take? What are some of the challenges? That sort of thing. You see that I've marked this old feeding zone. The previous feeding zone, you can also see some dryness on the edges here. That was beyond the reach of the bubble wrap. It's all perfectly normal and the worms are going to be fine in that. They don't mind, they can crawl. So let's start in an area that is away from the feeding zone. And look what I found right in the first corner that I went into. He's a very energetic worm, so I'll let him go. But my point being, that's a long way from the feeding zone, and I found a worm. So that tells me, what does it tell me? I've said it every time I think in these bin videos for this bin. When you find worms dispersed in the material, there's more over in that corner. When you find worms dispersed in your material, that could very well be a sign that they are hungry, especially since the corners that I'm finding them in are dryish. Now, it could very well be an old feeding zone that there was still residual food in there. If it wasn't a dry corner, I would say you also may find worms away from a feeding zone if there is moisture in a bin gravitating to one area. That happens sometimes if your bin isn't level. It happens if part of the bin is perhaps closer to a fan or a heater or a window that lets in some extra heat, and the other part of the bin is away from that heat source. So there's several reasons why worms may find more moisture away from a feeding zone. Also, you know, when you have a new bin like this, you may have to dampen the bedding from time to time in addition to the moisture that comes along with your food. And sometimes you may go overboard. Sometimes you have all intentions to just dampen a little bit and you dampen too much and you end up with a bit of a puddle. All right, so here's a remnant of a Kleenex. Most of the carbon in this bin is cardboard, but I do sometimes, have a Kleenex that I wipe out a feeding container with or something. Here's our old avocado shell. I would assume cleaned out now. Yeah, absolutely picked clean worms. Very, very good. Oh, and there's a breeding. Is that a breeding? Yeah, that's a breeding pair of worms right in the avocado. So you can see where they are joined in the center there. And so I will put those down. Now this may very well disrupt the breeding. I don't know. I don't have any stats on that, but don't worry. They will find either another partner or they will have done their deed and cocoons will already be on their way. All right, so let's just get to this last corner where if my marker is correct, that's the last feeding zone. So I've got some avocado pits over here. So I'll put the avocado shell, keep those together. So I've evened the moisture out. I've got somebody escaping here. So let me just take him and put him in. And he's got a partner driving the getaway car. So there's another one. All right. So let me just go over towards this feeding area and we'll see what we find here. Did not feed a lot because I want to make sure that I keep this bin healthy. It's easier for me to add moisture than to say, oh, the food is wet, the bin is dry, so I'll just add a lot of food. That would not necessarily be a good idea. Now you can see the cardboard in my feeding zone is still rather dry. So that food was not enough moisture to totally dampen the cardboard. It hasn't stopped the worms from being in this feeding area. I can see castings in here and no sign of the food. So I think what I'm going to do is, because the dry cardboard is already here, I'm just going to keep it right in this zone. Take out my feeding markers, but keep that dry cardboard-ish in that zone, because the feeding I have today is very moist. So I'm not going to add new cardboard. So here's another tip is I still see dry cardboard in here, so no need for me to add more carbon. I have a lovely slice of watermelon. This is slightly larger than the last one I gave them. Plus I have some pulverized eggshells in some avocado shells. So I assume the worms will get into all of those. So I'll just put all of this together along with the extra egg grit. Well, I didn't get all of it out of there, but there's certainly enough in there. Carbon on top. Mark the zone. And it's as easy as that. That's a worm check-in, and this bin is showing good signs of, well, now breeding and castings accumulation and population growth. So that's our check-in on Anne's bin for this week. All right, take care, everyone.